Hello again, it's Fraser Martin. I grow tomatoes, I write, I do professional driving, I build model cars, I restore stuff. I've talked about being a polymath or a jack of all trades and master of none. An eclectic activity merchant, whatever you like. It really all goes down to this nonsense about having to have a niche on YouTube. And I think I've explained as far as I can before that I don't think there is a niche that I can work in. I think the niche has just got to be me. I'm an old guy doing silver tubing, if you like. I think that's probably the nearest thing I can get to it. It's a tough old learning curve, this. And later on this video, I'm going to try something which is more for my diecast collector friends and diecast restorers. I'm going to try and do something with two cameras and see if I can edit that. If it works out, then it will be in at the end of this. If it doesn't, then it probably won't. But we'll see. And I think that getting round the technology is half the battle. I'm quite enjoying the editing part of it. But there are so many things that I do that I think are interesting, and that feedback so far would suggest that other people think might be a bit interesting. I just can't iron out one thing and then concentrate on that, because I don't think A, there's enough time to research, and B, there's not enough time to do it, and C, being regular on the same subject all the time, I think would get boring, but also just would become tiresome. And I've noticed that when I've been watching some YouTube things myself, you reach a point with someone that you follow, you get information from, you learn from. There's no question about that, and there have been several, and some that I do still follow. But there are some that I've kind of given up on because they seem to be recycling the same story, just with more wows and more questions and more goodness me's than they were the last time. But it's kind of the same stuff. And I don't think I've got enough of interest to be recycling all that stuff. And I'm not going to do AI, because this sort of talking head thing seems to be, one, more popular, and two, more interesting for me. I don't really want to be AI'd. I'll use AI for the purposes of, for example, the new photograph at the beginning, or maybe at the end, depending on how I edit it, which is a photograph that was taken a year and a half ago and was sent to AI with instructions for specific things to be done to it. And I'm kind of quite happy with the result. So I would use it for that, on the basis that I've got prompts to give it and I can get to where I want to be. And I've used it to generate timelines and title sequences in some of the videos that I've done. But I'm not planning to use it to do the videos for me. I just don't think that's on the cards for me. So if it interests you, then keep going with it, and we'll keep pushing on. It's going to be irregular, I think. It's going to be eclectic. It's going to be weird, I think, because you're not going to know what you're going to get by following me. And I don't think I'm going to know what you're going to get, because I haven't decided anything really until the morning I sit down and thought, I must do some filming today. I must get an edit done. I must sort this out before I travel again. Anyway, so that's by way of an introduction as to what I think is going on. It's taken 3 months, 3.5 months, maybe 4 months to actually find what I think is my direction. And we'll see if that works. If it doesn't, then maybe that's just going to be too bad. Maybe this is not for me. I don't know. There have been a few times when I've thought, I can't be bothered. And then I'll read something or I'll see something and I'm spurred ahead to do something else. So today is going to be a little bit about some history of a few diecasts. So it's essentially the next bit is going to be for my diecast pals. If you don't want to watch it, that's fine. Let me know what you would like to talk about. But at the moment, I'm just going to sit and concentrate on trying to be myself, a random silver tuber. And I'm not going to bore myself. I might bore somebody else, but I've got enough to do not to be bored. So I'll get on with it, I think. Thanks for watching. Welcome, fellow diecasters and diecast modelers. This is something that I've been thinking about doing, and I'm experimenting, as you could probably see, with 2 cameras. Very brave. We'll see how the edit goes. I thought today we might talk about Vanguards. And the reason that I think we should be talking about Vanguards as opposed to the Dinkies and the Corgis and the Spot-Ons and 1 or 2 other things that I think we're all familiar with, is that the Vanguards are now starting to come alive, as it were, for people like us who do restorations, and in my case, Code 3s. The first Vanguards are now 30 years old, and whilst that's only half a lifetime of Corgi or Dinky for that matter, well, a bit longer for Dinky, but Corgi, 56 I think Corgi was, so, 70 odd years. And the Vanguards are only 30 years. They're reaching the point now where you start to find them at the bottom of the scrap box with various bits of damage. And some of them are quite interesting. So I've got 4 here with me today just to have a look through them. The Rover, which is the first one, is number, and I've got the numbers written down here, it's number VA027. And this particular one, with the Renfrewshire and Bute livery, is part of a speed set that was produced. And the problem is I can't find out exactly the dates, but this is the earliest of the 4 cars that are here. The second one is an Austin Allegro, and I can't quite work out where this one comes from. It's got the sports wheels, and it has the space on the front for where a set of spotlights was supposed to be fitted. But it oddly doesn't have or has no signs of any of the rally graphics that would have appeared on this model. And I can't find any reference for a plain brown Allegro with the raw style or mini light type wheels and no graphics. So that's a wee bit of an odd one, and I'm not quite sure about that. The Granada is 052, so it's a bit later again, and this is the Granada gear, so nice metallic green. And the last one is the Austin Princess, which is into the 100s, I believe, and they get progressively better in terms of detail, things like mirrors working, finer bits of paintwork, better chrome, and more realistic stuff around, so they're getting better. The reason for discussing them this morning is that each of them is different, and I had this question from, I think, Martin Dare, who had the question from somebody else, and he sent me a message to say, how did you get into them? And they are all different, and this is the thing that has happened between 1996 when Vanguards started as Ledo, and then the Corgi took over but kept the Vanguard's name, and then the Vanguard's name was dropped, and then they just all became Corgis. that there's been different ways of fastening them up. The ones that were made in the UK were riveted, and the ones that were made in China started to get Phillips screws on them. So this rover, which, as I say, was part of the police speed set, has conventional fixings at the bottom. There are two rivets which are sunk into a metal base, and that's normal conventional stuff. I would use a 1.8mm drill to run a pilot hole right down through that, and then take a bigger drill to knock the top off the rivet, and then do a tap and put on 2mm screws to hold the whole thing together once I finished doing whatever I did with it, and then that would be fair enough. So that's a kind of conventional thing as we would know it. The sneaky ones started a bit later, and what happens with the Allegro is that when you look underneath it, there's absolutely nothing to see at all. And so what you have to do is to look for the components. It's still a metal base, but there are two little components, sometimes only one, but in this case two. And these are little plastic tabs. So if you can get the little plastic tab up like that, underneath that is a hole with, again, a conventional rivet. And then underneath the sump guard on the front of this one, if I can get that out, yeah, it's the same. So sump guard and what looks like the floor of the petrol tank will reveal the same kind of rivets that the rover has. And you would just do that, drill them out the same way. Moving a bit newer, what we're starting to see now is the Corgi name and the dropping of the Vanguards altogether. So Corgi is there, it still has Lado, and again, same story as the Allegro. We take off the boot floor, in this case, of the Granada. We get that out. It's not as easy as it looks, which I suppose is part of the idea that I might be better with my glasses on. So we'll do that, and then the boot floor will come off, and inside now we have, I don't know if you can see that properly or not, but a tiny little Phillips screw. So they're starting to be screwed together, and this one also has a panel on the front which kind of looks like just a finisher, but that will come up as well, and that can come off, and there will be a Phillips screw underneath there as well. So they're quite tricky to get off, and obviously quite tricky to get back on again. But that's now how you would release these. And these are, of course, much easier. You can see the difference in the details. There's fine... These windscreen wipers are simply moulded in and painted. These are little bits of metal photo etched and put in. These are photo etched as well, but they're even finer. And then later on, these heavier duty ones, which were always much heavier, are separate plastic components along with the mirrors. And the Princess is the same as the Granada. You pop out the boot lid, or sorry, the boot floor, if you can. Here's one I made earlier. Never mind. And the sump on the transverse engine from this car, and that will come out as well. And it reveals, if you're careful enough. Let's see. It reveals the same thing. So, a tiny little black Phillips screw. And that's how you dismantle these. So I thought that may be quite interesting because, as I say, I've been asked the question, and that's the answer. So, rivets, hidden screws, depending on what age the model is. So there we are. That's my little snippet for Vanguards this morning. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's been useful. I hope we can do some more. Fraser Martin saying good morning. I just took a break from recording to make myself a cup of tea. We don't do anything stronger than tea until 6 o'clock in the evenings in this house. And I thought I'll just make myself a cup of tea before I do the closing sequence for this video. And I've just knocked the top off the water bottle that I use to fill the kettle with and flooded the kitchen. It's taken me 15 minutes to clean up the mess. And I'm just scunnered by doing something so stupid. Anyway, there isn't much else to report. I'm travelling again in a couple of days. I'm going off back to Jeddah for another Land Rover Defender trophy and tour date, this time in Jeddah. And then I'll be back after the weekend. Last weekend I was off at Yas Marina, as I think I may have mentioned tail end of the last video, to help look after the Porsche Club guys at a Porsche event on Yas Marina, which coincided with the Porsche Carrera Cup. So that was quite a long weekend. And between that and other things in between, catching up, getting some cooking done, sorting out the garden, and getting a very, very disappointing crop of potatoes harvested. Don't quite know what went on. Ticked all the boxes, followed all the rules. Maybe the potatoes were just not very good. Anyway, suffice to say that the miserly collection of potatoes was just enough to knock out a potato salad. And so I'm going to have some of that for my lunch. What else? I've been experimenting with various bits of AI on the photograph that I mentioned earlier, and seeing where else that might take me. But not an awful lot else to report. So if you enjoyed the middle section of this video about the Vanguard model cars, then so much the better. If you didn't, or you skipped past it, then I'm sorry, this is going to be a short one. But I shall try to do better next time. No idea what the subject will be. We'll just have to see what happens, and if it's interesting, I'll report it. And if it isn't, I'll probably just keep it to myself. Thank you very much. This is Fraser Martin, wishing you a very good afternoon with a cup of tea, which I have managed not to spill down my shirt, I'm delighted to note. And we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. I got the little corgi Ford Zephyr finished. That was the 65-year-old casting that was sitting here on my desk when I was working on the Rover and the Caravan. So I got that finished. So it's looking quite good, I think. It's not bad at all. And I managed to get out into the desert, probably for the first time not actually working, just the other day there during the week, with a pal of mine and his truck, and we went out and just did a bit of pottering around in the sand. It's really nice, lazy afternoon, bit of a picnic lunch and some barbecue later on. So lazy day, that was really quite good. And then I made another note here and I can't read it, so let me just check what it says. Yeah, the old Jeep's still going. After 18 years, I was quite surprised to see that it still hasn't failed me. So I'm quite pleased with that. It's looking a bit tatty now if you get up close to it, and it'll need some work. But that will have to wait for